It's a Minefield is an audio exploration produced by us, people who ride the waves of mental and emotional distress.
Our expertise comes from our lived experience, and these are the stories you'll hear, along with those who are on the journey with us.
The roller coaster of mental health can be lonely and overwhelming, but we're all in this together and would love for you to join us.
Hey, Hannah.
Hello.
Hey, Leon.
Hey, Chris. Hey, Hannah.
How are you travelling?
Oh, 6.8 out of 10.
Right on credit. So I sat down with Mohammad Awad and we talked about the intersection of Muslim culture and queerness.
Have either of you been raised in a religious background?
No, my family is atheist. So no. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, both parents very staunchly Catholic. So life up until 18 was church every week, Catholic school, a lot of dogma and stuff around sexuality and having that kind of negative views around sexuality and different sexualities to being straight, kind of forced down my throat in a militant kind of way.
How did that affect you?
Yeah, I think it's still something I'm sitting with. Like, I identify as queer or bisexual, but that's something I repressed for a long time and thought, oh, it's just a phase, or, this, isn't right, and I could never be in love with, somebody that's not, cis female identifying. So I had these kind of like rules around it, and they're still there, but I guess they rule my life less. But there's still a huge amount of guilt and shame that comes up.
Yes, I can relate. My dear recently passed father was an ex-Catholic priest. So I was raised pretty Catholic, but I've got to say he was never homophobic. Other members of my family were extremely homophobic, but I absolutely relate to the sense of deep shame that I still struggle with every day. Just attached to that, the idea of being evil or, having being against God. I don't even believe in God personally, but that was embedded, and it gets embedded quite deeply.
And how have you managed to deal with that over the years, Leon?
Heaps of therapy. It's one of the hardest journeys of my life. It's kind of where a lot of my distress emerges from. So tell us about Mohammad. So he's a queer Muslim.
He is. And he runs a project which we're going to be talking about, queer young Muslim people who want to keep their Muslim identity and also keep and be held in their queer identity. It's like they're not things that are opposite, and both can exist at the same time.
Wow.
And Mohammad talks about that. And also Mohammad's a wonderful writer and has appeared on shows like The Project and Insight. And he talks about how writing is resistance for him.
Beautiful. I can't wait to hear it.
Me either. Let's do it.
Let's roll.
Hey folks, it's Chris here. I'm here with Mohammad Awad, a poet and peer worker, talking about his use of poetry as a form of expression and healing and asserting his identity. We're in his living room in Bankstown, and we're having some beautiful Lebanese tea and bacala. Can you, for the people at home, say the name of the Lebanese tea?
It's Mahmoud tea. It's a Lebanese cardamom and cinnamon blend.
Yum. And is there a bit of honey in there as well?
There's some sweetness.
Yum.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, it's very delicious, and thank you so much for coming on this podcast, and for sharing part of your journey.
Thank you so much.
I guess you're a poet and a peer worker. You're the youngest peer worker in New South Wales. How did that come about?
I was the youngest.
You were the youngest.
I have since grown, but I started at 18 in New South Wales Health.
Wow.
As a peer worker. And it's a long story, but I essentially did a really good interview. And I pitched myself as like, hey, there are no youth peer workers who work in peer work and are also young people. And they took a risk on me. And my manager told me 3 months later that it was a bit of a sell to the interview panel, but that they took a risk on me, and it all paid off, and they were really happy with that. So that's basically it. And I started working across North Sydney LHC for a year and a half before I started working as a peer worker at the Forensic Hospital, as the first ever forensic peer worker, and developing the model of care there, and designing and seeing how peer work would work in a forensic setting where there are more legal restrictions and complications there. And I've been working lived experience roles for close to 6 years, maybe 6.5 years. And now I'm the peer manager for Muslim Peers Project, which is a queer Muslim mental health service based in Bankstown, but serving queer Muslims all across New South Wales. Particularly young queer Muslims from 14 to 25.
That's fantastic. Can you tell me a bit more about the Muslim Peer Project and your role in it, and I guess how it supports young queer Muslims?
Yeah. So I run the service, and we have a peer model where we focus on getting queer Muslims to engage with mental health professionals who are also queer and Muslim, and to have a lived experience sense from a mental health lived experience perspective, but also a cultural lived experience perspective. You know, BIPOC people and queer people have talked at length about wanting, mental health professionals who understand their lived experience. And so that's what this service is. I think the future of mental health services are these sort of niche, smaller organizations, as opposed to Headspace, which is trying to do so much, but we can kind of hone in on the people who need our support the most. And we do things from, mental health support to counseling to art and creative therapies to peer mentoring, and we also do events. So we have like a queer iftar or a queer Eid celebration where we can kind of open the space to anyone who wants to bring their chosen family to a space, and we all kind of celebrate together. That hasn't been without any dramas or issues, but it's been an incredible experience to watch this community grow from when we started, which had maybe 4 active clients, to 20 active clients plus 20 or 30 other young people who come to groups and stuff. So it's growing really quickly, and the need for it and the capacity for it. The need for it needs to match the capacity. No, the other way around. The capacity for it needs to match the need for it. Mm-hmm. So we're just constantly responding to that. I always feel like every week I'm putting in an extra hour, and then by the end of the year, it'll be my full-time job. So it sounds like resourcing and things like that is a bit of a challenge for this project. Yeah, but the main issue is just funding. There's not a lot of grants that are tailored to queer Muslims out there, so it's a bit of a hassle, and we're always looking for people who can sponsor and donate or help fund us. So putting it out there for anyone who wants to help us out. You can find me, slide in my DMs. But we also have an Instagram page, Muslim Peers Project, that where we share, creative pieces or messages from the young people that we work with to other queer Muslims. One really lovely story where I got involved because one young queer Muslim wanted to reach out to another person in the service and show their love and support, and they wrote a letter, and they asked me to read it as a poet, and then they allowed us to publish it on the Instagram, and so from then I joined the service, started running the service. So it's really a place where word of mouth and community kind of is celebrated, and we grow every day.
It sounds like such a beautiful, safe space and a really good alternative to the health system.
Yes.
And the broadness of that, and also the systemic discrimination that exists around a lot of areas around gender and sexuality and race.
100%. And we work with these organizations as well. Like, we work with Kim's Chaos, Cam's teams. We work with organizations like 2010 and other sort of services that are out there, and we kind of collaborate with them to be part of their mental health care plan or their team or whatever it is. So while we're an exclusive service that everyone wants to be part of, we also collaborate with others, and we're open to that too.
So CAMS is the children's team, yeah, and young people. I guess how have like external organisations like CAMS and Headspace and things like that responded to the Muslim Peer Project? It
has been really overwhelmingly positive. I think when these teams find that they have their gaps and they don't know what to do, they call us and they reach out to us, they find us. Sometimes, and most times, we're seeing them independently. Sometimes we're seeing them with a clinician, and it's a sort of 2-to-1 approach. But what we're finding more than anything is a lot of young people are presenting with suicidal distress or mental health distress or self-harm, and their families don't know how to respond, so particularly from cold backgrounds. And so we have a lot of cultural support we do there, because suicidality and self-harm also looks very differently in BIPOC communities, particularly Muslim communities as well. So being able to put a cultural lens on it and support the family through that is really important. That's been really incredible. But also giving families a way to process what their child is going through, that their queer identity doesn't have to be in opposition to their Muslim identity, and that finding a way to bridge that gap has been the most incredible work. And I think these services were really starting to get around. And I got a call today, just today while I'm off work, left someone with a voicemail being like, "Can you call us, because we found another one." And I said, "Yep, I'll call you guys back." So there's a lot of excitement. I think sometimes in mental health we can palm people off to different services, and we always say, we're not doing that. We're going to work with you, and we're not going to just let you send someone our way without, if they need that level of support. So it's been really cool.
Yeah. How has it been using your own lived experience as a queer Muslim young person in this role and in peer work more generally?
Look, it feels weird. I'm not going to lie, because outside of my work, I'm also an artist, and I do a lot of stuff in film and media. And a lot of young people are like, "I saw you on the ABC and I followed you." And I'm like, ooh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And so for a lot of queer Muslims, I'm actually one of the first representations they see in media. They're like, you were in my family group chat, they were talking about you. And I was like, ooh, let me follow this person. So even when I'm being like shit talked in these WhatsApp groups, or when people are attacking me, or, you know, when people are showing love and support as well. But even in those negative spaces, there are queer Muslims there in the silence, like keenly being aware and being like, oh, they run a mental health service and da da da. So I think the majority of the young people I've worked with have started off session being like, "So I saw you on da 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 da," and I'm like, "Thank you so much. We're gonna have some therapeutic boundaries here." But it's really cool. It's very sweet and it's very kind. I feel like I'm 24, but I feel like a queer Muslim elder already. Like I feel like a grandma in the community, and I wish there were more queer Muslims that were able to take up that space, and I'm always just advocating for that, because it's a lot being an artist or being a role model or being a mental health professional or being whatever in these sort of spaces. But I'm a firm believer in being the representation that you want. I always think about doing it from a place of the fact that I needed this when I was younger, and that's why we do the work. But ultimately, it's a true blessing, because I always ask for, if there were 10 of me, everyone could do one thing. we could get world peace or something.
Some Mohammed clones.
That's what I'm saying. But until then, I'm happy to hold as much space as I need to. A lot of the young people we work with actually say, I want to do what you do one day. Will you guys hire me in 3 years when I finish my social work degree? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, we'll talk about it in 3 years. Like, I cannot offer you a job right now. And I don't know if we have funding for that job now. But in 3 years, hopefully we do. And we are hiring queer Muslims. So a lot of young people are really inspired by that, by seeing a queer Muslim, in media, but more so someone who's trying to hold space for the community, and they really want to give back. They're so grateful, and they really just want to give back. And that's been the most amazing part of the experience, is building the next generation of mental health professionals, and hoping that they take that path.
Yeah, and that they do it in a culturally aware and safe way. Mm-hmm. And I guess, there'll be less of the current, problems that are in the system.
Hopefully, we can only imagine. Yeah, I mean, the world could get worse, but it could also get better.
Yeah, I think like mental health recovery, I think it's an up and down journey.
Yes,
there'll be moments of there'll
be highs,
real
there'll be
triumph,
lows.
and then there'll be moments of survival and when things go on really shit. Amen. Yeah, you mentioned before about being a role model and the emotional toll that can take. How do you... I'm curious about how you manage that.
Therapy. And it's the work, it's the writing that gets me through it. And I always say that if I didn't have poetry, I just wouldn't be alive. And I know that to be true, because I started writing when I was 11. And it was the only way I had to cope before any other mental health services got involved, before I engaged with anyone else, before I could tell anyone else, because being gay was a big secret. So it was just with me and my work. And I'm really grateful that now we have, this poetry therapy program that I developed that's all focused around recovery and focused on creating expressive and writing techniques, and using writing techniques that are also helpful for mental health distress, being able to hold space in the whole community and create community. Yeah, I guess, obviously mental health, I at one point was seeing 2 therapists. I've brought that down to 1 because I'm doing so well.
Yeah.
But there's my writing that I do a lot, and I have an incredible support network of amazing friends.
Like that community and people around you that you can love and trust, and you've got their back, they've got yours. I think that's the key to getting through difficult times and mental health struggles.
100%. Even when it comes to the young people we support, when they meet each other at events and stuff like that and groups, so many of them form their own friendships and relationships, and they go from there and they build their own community, kind of connected to ours but still their own thing, or all these little Venn diagrams kind of coming together to form the community. But yeah, it's been lovely.
Yeah. You said like poetry saved your life. What about it do you think?
I think first of all, the privacy of it for me at the beginning. Just having a way to expel my thoughts from my brain, which were ruminating, which were stressful, which were intrusive and scary. Being able to put it on the paper and just vomit it out of my head was the first thing. Just to have the place to process my feelings and process my emotions. One of the tasks we do in the poetry, in recovery poetry, which is the therapeutic program, is we start every session with a stream of consciousness task just for 5 minutes, just to expel the thoughts in our heads, just so we can get an idea of where we're at and go from there, because it really sets the tone for what we're about to do. And for me, as an 11-year-old, that's how I wrote. That's how I still write to this day. It's still word vomits. But there was that. There was also writing on like a more macro level kind of helped me become a better storyteller. It helped me understand how to articulate myself in a way that I wouldn't have when I was younger. And it also helped it helped me sort of avenue into other spaces where, I don't know, it started with poetry, but it ended up in music, it ended up in playwriting, it ended up in film and TV, and it ended up in so many other spaces. And poetry, you really learn the basics of writing when you do poetry, because you have to be so concise and so precise, and you're articulating your experience through metaphor, through visual imagery. Look, we had a conversation just before this podcast, and even when I was speaking, I could like hear how I always use visual metaphors. I always use imagery. I always use these like ways, and it's just how I speak now. So I think it's given me the language I needed to tell my story. And it's given me the language I needed to ask for help, and the language I needed to help others. See, it still sounds like I'm doing poetry.
It does, and that was what the wow was about, because it sounds so poetic. Yeah. And I guess, what would you say to a young person who was struggling and was maybe listening to this podcast, and they could see some similarities in their story to yours?
You're not alone. And I know that when you're queer, for instance, it can be really an isolating experience, particularly when you come from religious backgrounds or culturally complex backgrounds or culturally diverse backgrounds. And when you experience racism or discrimination related to other parts of your identity, usually it's something your family experiences as a unit. So if someone calls me a terrorist one day, my mum and dad will know how to support me and how to help me and tell me why that's not okay, and show me my love and care and acceptance that I'm looking for. But when I tell them that I'm queer, it throws a whole wrench into the mix, because first of all, they may not identify as queer. Most times, as far as we know, they don't. So you experience that, and you're isolated in that, even within your family. Sometimes violence can come from your family. Sometimes your family, a lot of times, most times, families don't know how to respond, and they don't have the language for it, and they don't have the skills or the training for it. And I think my work is in trying to help people get there. But for a young person hearing this now who is looking for that community and is feeling really isolated, we're here. We're out here. We're growing. We've always been here. Queer Muslims, for instance, or queer people have existed for thousands of years, and we're not going anywhere. And I know it's scary right now, but reach out to us. DM us on Instagram if you're looking for support, and let us know how we can help you, because we're here for you, and we don't ask for you to come without your queerness. We don't ask for you to come without your religion, and we don't ask for you to come without your identity and without who you are. We're here to support you, and it's scary, but speaking to us doesn't have to be the cataclysmic event that it can feel like, just making that first step, because I know how that can feel. But it's just a chat. So reach out and give us a chat, and maybe we can help.
Thank you so much. We're going to put a link to the Muslim Peer Project on the website and on Spotify, so that if anybody listening, or if any parents are listening and would like support, that'll be up there. Thanks so much, Mohammad.
No worries.
Mohammad is very generously going to share a poem with us now, and trigger warning, it contains some difficult themes around suicide. So if you would like to reach out, then please do.
Alrighty. This piece is called Madness Opus. Creating fortresses out of bed sheets, pillows, and the corners of my mattress, I cradle my speakers into my favorite child. A steel swaddle of sorts I keep between me and my thoughts of separation from this body. A sensation of deep depressed desperation, thinking how my shoe ties seem pretty tight. How the windows from this floor seem about the perfect height. If I could just get something done right, if I could just be successful once. I don't want it to be my suicide. I don't want to think of my mother. Wonder how much space I take up in her mind if I cross her thoughts as much as I cross out apologies in my suicide letters. My suicide poetry never hits a wall it does not want to leap from. Never reaches a writer's block it can't climb over. Never finds a detail in a suicide plan it hasn't taken into consideration. Never a possibility not in preparation. I just want to show my therapist and get some appreciation for how well I was able to focus on one thing for so long. She asks me if I think of the consequences of my actions. I wonder how many people will attend the funeral. What anecdotes they will share, if this was a tragic shock, a loss they could not repair from. I wonder if they expected this. I wonder if my mother would attend, if she'll wish she had pretended to love me just a little bit more. I wonder if she would embrace my grieving boyfriend, if she could learn to love him. Maybe, just maybe, even in my death, I'm still trying to teach my family how to accept me. I have already written my own eulogy. I remember my first draft at 11. It has been 11 years since, and not much has changed. It is my greatest work. It is more honest than this piece, my madness opus.
Thanks for tuning in.
It's a Minefield is produced by Chris Jaeger
Hannah Achilles.
And Leon Fernandez.
Audio by Lockie Hilda.
We're kindly supported by the Mental Health Commission of New South Wales. You can reach out to us at iamf.org.au. And remember, we're all in this together.